I wanted to thank everyone for coming tonight. My name is Adam Pryor. I am Water and Sewer's Chief Engineer. So tonight we are talking about the lead service replacement program and state revolving funds. This is a public meeting discussing this. We have a lot of posters and a lot of discussions. So with that, I'm going to introduce Michaela and Carrie, and they'll talk about the program with Greeley. So thank you very much.
Looking at you guys expectantly. All right, so I'm Michaela Jackson. I'm the Water Quality and Regulatory Compliance Manager.
I'm Kerry Fishlock. I'm a civil engineer and I'm the project manager for the lead project. I am from England, so if you can't understand my accent, give me a wave.
So a quick overview of the agenda. We're going to start off talking about the lead protection program, our SRF application, some alternatives we've been looking at for our project, the area budget and schedule for the project, and then we'll follow up with some more presentation about the data we're collecting and using to help inform our decisions, as well as a one-on-one poster session and some Q&A. So first, I just want to frame the problem that we're trying to address. So obviously, lead is not great. Although the water leaving Greeley's treatment plant or treatment facilities is lead-free, under certain conditions, lead can enter the water through internal plumbing, service lines that contain lead. And exposure to lead over a long period can cause serious health effects. These are particularly concerning in infants, children, and pregnant women.
So yeah, as Michaela said, historically some of the water service lines in Greeley do contain lead. And just to really kind of point out that if you have a lead service line, that lead is not necessarily leaching into the water. It happens under certain conditions. But obviously we'd rather not have lead pipes there in the first place, so that's be a possibility. So, you know, we're talking a lot about service lines tonight, and this diagram you're looking at shows a house, and it shows the service line which takes the water from the water main to the house. And the service line is divided into two halves. So the first half belongs to the city, and that runs from the water main to the water meter. And then the second half runs from the water meter to the house, is a private half, and that belongs to the homeowner. So because of a change in EPA regulations, the lead and copper rule, the city is required to develop and maintain a service line inventory, including material information for both the public and the private portions of the service line. So historically, we do not have records for the private side of the service line because it belongs to the homeowner, but now we're required to do that. So the regulations also require that lead lines and galvanized steel lines downstream of historical lead must be removed. This includes the private side of the service line where it hasn't done before. And just kind of a heads up on the galvanized steel. So the galvanized steel can absorb lead and then re-release it in the future. So that's why the galvanized steel has to come out as well if lead was previously upstream of that galvanized steel.
So the properties we're primarily looking at in the city of Greeley are older. The possibility of having a lead service line increases with age. The diagram at the bottom shows by decade what we currently anticipate as the possibility of each of these different build dates having a lead service line. For reference, the reason we are looking before 1981 is because in 1980, Greeley adopted the International Plumbing Code, which specifically banned the use of lead in service lines.
So in addition to the age of the property, we also have some historical records that indicate where we found lead to be present previously on the public side of the service line. And we've been proactively removing those since the 1990s. So as we adopted this project, our understanding was that all of the existing public lead service lines had been removed. So this map shows very broadly those locations. It's approximately 1,800 locations in the city. And so what we need to do now is to go back and see the private side service line of these properties and see what material these are, and double check what the public side material is too. So these properties are defining what we're calling our kind of priority area where we're focusing our investigations.
So some of the options or alternatives that we have explored to solve this problem include doing nothing. We didn't really explore this one because it doesn't really address the problem. This would essentially result in potential water quality impacts to residents, health concerns, and would also leave the city open to potential water quality violations. One of the other alternatives is to implement additional corrosion control treatment at the water treatment plants. While this would reduce some of the urgency potentially to remove the existing lead service lines, implementing additional corrosion control treatment can be fairly costly, and it would require us to potentially use orthophosphate. The use of orthophosphate in drinking water treatment would increase ongoing costs at the wastewater treatment plant to remove those nutrients from the phosphate. And that would be an expensive ongoing cost. Essentially, both these two alternatives are considered less than ideal from a public health perspective. We're essentially being encouraged to identify and replace lead service lines in the distribution system. So our preferred alternative is to identify and remove those service lines. Okay, so here we go, the preferred alternative. Essentially, we plan to identify water service line material through potholing and other verification methods. You can see in the image to the left, this is an example of what potholing looks like. Essentially, that's digging small holes and looking down 6 or so feet to identify the service line and what material it is. We have other verification methods too that we're pursuing. And once we do identify service lines that contain a source of lead, we're planning to replace those. To protect public health during this process, we are providing water filter pitchers up front to all households with a history of lead. And while this is an expensive capital project, it's a one-time expense that permanently removes those lead sources from the system and improves the water quality for residents.
So the map you can see now outlines our preliminary plan for potholing and doing removals and replacements for service lines. You can see the small bubble there in the red area is where we've completed potholing already, and we're now moving on to the replacement phase for that small bubble. But beyond that, we're looking to do the red color phase in the rest of 2023, the green area in 2024, the blue area in 2025, and then the rest of the city later on in 2025. That's if we have the funding in place to move at that pace. So looking at the budget, if we have the necessary funds, this will be a 3-year project costing between about $19 and $23 million to do the potholing, to do the replacements. So the vast majority of that money is in replacements. It's $15.8 million, around $4 million for the potholing, and then around $1.6 million in other costs.
So to help offset some of these costs, we are pursuing funding through the Colorado Drinking Water State Revolving Fund Loan Program. This program is managed by the state to distribute federal funds and essentially low-interest loans to water providers for infrastructure projects. For lead removal projects, the program does include a possible loan forgiveness for a portion of the loan amount, which will help us save some money, hopefully. In terms of projected rate increases for this project, to fund the preferred alternative of removing lead service lines, it would require a roughly 3% rate increase, and that would be assuming we do not get any loan forgiveness through that SRF. In comparison, I believe it was alternative B, to install additional corrosion control treatment, that would actually drive a rate increase of at least 3% on the water side and an additional 0.5% or more for wastewater to remove those additional nutrients. With the SRF loan, we would essentially be able to reduce the rate needed to 2.5%. Either this, or we could also use those funds to invest in other capital projects that cost saving.
So this construction project is, by its very nature, in the older areas of the city. The older properties are the ones that are more likely to have a lead service line. And so construction will be in areas of the city with historically significant buildings. As such, the State Historic Preservation Office, or SHPO, as we've been calling it, will conduct a review to determine the effects on historical properties and archaeological sites, and may seek alternatives to avoid, minimize, or mitigate these. So the city will be, having someone do this historic investigation, and then we will be using approved methods to mitigate the risk to historical buildings. And then in terms of environmental impacts, this project will have a minimal impact on natural areas. The project is exclusively in urban areas that have already been developed and disturbed from their natural state. So we're looking at the service line that's between the road and the property. So we are digging holes in the road or out the front of a house where the land has already been disturbed and developed.
So in summary, the preferred alternative that the city of Greeley is pursuing is to identify and replace service lines that contain a source of lead. This project is expected to take a number of years, likely 3 to 4, depending on funding. We will provide those homes we determined to be most at risk with a water filter up front and replacement filter cartridges until their line has been removed, and then 6 months following. This project is expected to cost approximately $21 million, and we are pursuing state funding through the SRF program to reduce the cost to ratepayers.
That's it, the questions?
Nope. Oh, yeah. And if there are any questions, please feel free to ask now. We also do have a poster session following our next presentation where questions can be asked one-on-one.
Yeah. Do we have any questions? Great.
Thank you.
Since you've already got the project going and you're hauling people's yards, since you've already started potholing in people's yards, have you found any lines that are lead service lines?
Yes, we did identify some lead service lines and galvanized downstream service lines in our first phase of potholing. We are moving into the replacement phase shortly to address those.
How receptive have the homeowners been to the new service line replacement?
Sorry, I didn't quite hear that with the microphone.
Are the homeowners receptive to you replacing their whole service line, or are they not interested in you digging a whole fresh trench across their yard?
Well, I think we've had some mixed responses, and we're at the beginning of the game as well. So we've recently just put out some letters asking people to sign a consent form for the replacement itself, and we've had some really early adopters for that. We've had about 10 people straight away putting their hand up for a replacement. So we have some people that are pretty keen, and we've had some good conversations with people in the neighborhood whilst potholing. But we have also met some other people that are saying, you know, we'd rather not be disturbed, you know, please don't come on our property. So we've had mixed responses.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Still Ed Grant. My house was built in 1980, so I'm right on that borderline there. But all the previous houses I have had are well in your 1950s, 2411 27th Avenue Place was 1980. That's my current house. Before that, 1314 23rd Avenue Court was built in 1957. My parents bought it. I lived there for 30 years. There was a cornfield west of us. My job as a 6-year-old was to try to keep the corn shucks off the roof, out of the front porch, and out of the window wells. It was impossible. There was a cornfield right across the street. Anyway, 2221 10th Avenue, right down the road, right from the UNC University Center. My cousin owns a rental. He used to have several of them up here. He was a banker, and he had some on 9th Avenue and 21st Street and 10th Avenue. He still has the one at 11th Avenue and Cranford. I think the address is 1030 Cranford. And he had asked me if I would keep track of some of this stuff because he lives in Loveland. So anyway, he is right smack dab in the middle of your project here. So he will probably be getting a call or a letter or something. They will probably deliver it to his 1030 Cranford Avenue, Cranford Place apartment. And the kids there will, I don't know, throw it away, who knows. He'll probably never hear about it. I could send him this brochure to his address in Loveland, which would, I'm sure, inform him of what you were intending to do, but I'm not sure whether it's actually worth it for him to do it. I mean, I have a service line, private and water meter, and then the city service line to the water main. But as I say, I'm right at the 1980 border of, I think all my pipes are copper pipes. My cousin's, Tom Nauman, his pipes are probably some of those, very early pipes that were down there very near Cranford, Gunner Hall, and all that stuff at UNC. So he's smack dab in the middle of your map right there. So you could let me know if you want me to send him one. I will be glad to do that, but he might want to know. I don't know. His wife takes care of everything. He just comes over to mow the lawn. Thanks.
Yeah, I think that would be great. We would very much appreciate that. I will say that does also bring up a very good point with regards to rental properties and how we plan to deal with those. While we do generally try to reach out to the property owner with the consent form because we want them to consent to the replacement, we are pursuing a lot of different methods of communication to also communicate with the resident living on the property. Like I said, we're providing those folks with filters. We're sending letters by direct mail, but we're also utilizing other means like email through our Water Smart program. And we also have a survey that we're putting out. And yeah, just a lot of door knocking and kind of person-to-person conversations as well.
Okay, that was good information. I have a little question then in addition to my cousin's property at 1030 Cranford. He has called up on the phone and one time we had a big snow. It was piled up on the power lines and they were coming down all over. I saw a tree fall down on like a $60,000 Cadillac Escalade. I mean, it just went right down fully depreciated Cadillac, you know. Anyway, he called up to see if there was going to be any problems with his apartment because, you know, the electricity goes out, the furnace doesn't work and all that kind of thing, the refrigerator, the lights, nothing. So he called up and anyway, one time I got a call from his daughter who lives in Fort Collins, and one time his son who lives in Fort Collins because my cousin was in Egypt for a month, and another time he was in China for a month, and another time he was in Australia for a month. He and his wife tend to gad around, you know, and he doesn't hear about this stuff. His mail can build up. His son grabs it or something and throws it in the house, you know. So he may not hear about this stuff for months, okay? But I say I would be glad to send him something like this, you know, just to his address in Loveland.
I mean, I think you're right. It is it could be a challenge to reach out to some of these property owners. So the default that we're doing is sending a letter to the property owner's address, which is really the main record that we have as to, you know, how to contact the property owner. So we are sending them a letter, and then, like Michaela said, we're also talking to the people that are actually living in the house as well. And something that's quite good is with our consent form, you know, we have the property owner put their consent against the service line replacement, but they can actually nominate a designee. So that would be a person that would then take care of the business for them, that could arrange the replacement and the timing for that with the contractor.
Thank you for your comments.
Okay, so we're going to share a little bit more in detail right now about some of our data collection systems. So we're going to have Patrick come up and share, and yeah. But before we come on, Patrick. But the other thing just to say is that if you have more questions, we also have a question box, which is over here. So if you think of any more questions as we go, throw your question in there, and we will address it at the end of the night before we leave.
Hello all, my name is Patrick Tern. I am the asset management manager for the water and sewer group. I've been working for the city for about 5 years in the asset management department, and it has been a thrill to work for the city this time. Also on my team is Sophie Glabius, who is our asset analyst, and she does a lot of work with this program as well. I'd like to go over with you some of the work that we've been doing for this project as it relates to the data. This project has been incredibly intense on a data level. We have been parsing through data sources that we didn't even know existed before this year to try and piece together a picture of the city and build out our service line inventory. In an effort to do that, we have been spatially showing all of the data that we have been recording so that we can better understand it, which is where GIS comes from, the Geographic Informational System, which we use to produce all of these maps and graphs and data sets that you see around you. Some of the primary sources of data that we're using for this project are historical records that have been pulled from the many, many years that water and sewer crews have been operating in the city of Greeley. They've been taking very good notes of when taps are installed. They've been handwriting out notes when services are replaced, and these sources of information are invaluable for us. The toughest part of it really has been making it into a digital format. Second, we have data that's been gathered when water mains were replaced or underwent rehab. Like I said before, we have a lot of historical data from the water shops. We also have our potholing results, which from our phase 1 program, we were able to get about 144 accounts potholed, which is a 100% verified service material that we can add to our inventory. And then lastly is our basement inspections through the survey that was created by Sydney. It has been a great tool that we've used to find out what is in your home, what service material is coming in through your basement. So we've taken all these sources of data, the handwritten notes, the binders full of tap card information, and we've put them all into a digital format. It gives us maps that give us a good picture of the situation that we're looking for. A lot of the decision-making that has been made up to this point, like for phase one, was made because of the maps and data that we have categorized and used in our decision-making process. So let me go through a little bit with you about how this looks in our map and how we're looking at it. This is really zoomed in, but if we look at this, this is from a historic lead record. This layer is, spatial data is created from the efforts of the water shop going through and replacing lead as they found it, as they were doing other projects. So if they were going through and lining a water main, they would record when they found lead and replace it. This has been important for us to know areas of the city to target as we continue expanding our initial phase one area. Just knowing where we may find lead by knowing of its existence in the past. We have found a correlation between how much your valve turns to the stop box going to the meter and potentially the material that lies within. If a valve turns 360 degrees, we have about a 92% chance of that being lead. If it turns a quarter turn, then most likely it's made out of copper or a safe material. We are currently using field maps, which is a mobile application that our field crews can use on their phones to track this data in real time. So as they go out into the field and turn valves, we have up-to-date data as it comes in. Oh, I'm sorry. Lastly, we have the spatial data collected from our potholing results in an effort to make this data a little bit more manageable. The asset management department coordinated with IT to deploy an Esri solution, which is a standardized data collection template that we were able to utilize with our city to collect data into. What you're seeing right here is an example of a street block that was potholed. You'll notice that blue are for safe areas, non-lead. Gray is for areas that are unknown. Yellow is for galvanized requiring replacements, and red is lead. These half semicircles are split off. The left side is the utility, and the right side is the customer. And lastly, all of this data culminates into our last spatial data set, which is the replacement phase. We use these maps to identify hotspots, streets that we can disturb only once by replacing as many services on it as are needed, and just using the data that we have to inform our decisions. It is my hope that by the end of this project, everything is blue and green and very boring. Our last and probably one of our biggest initiatives right now is the material survey. We've mentioned it a few times, but it is also an application or a web-based survey that anyone can do on their phone or computer. It is important for us to gather information on the customer side of the service line, an area where we are right now sorely lacking information. As many surveys as can be submitted is welcome. We would not turn down the opportunity to have that data. If you have questions about what your material is, then the survey itself walks you through identifying your material, even if you're not sure about it, different tests that you can do to see if it's lead or a galvanized steel or just a copper pipe. You do not need to be the owner of the property that you're living in order to fill out the survey. Just having the data is enough for us. We also have a QR code which is distributed on many of our pamphlets, letters, material that we hand out. By taking a picture of this QR code, it will take you to a website where you can fill out the survey. And I'd like to walk you through going through that survey right now. So when you come up to the survey, I'm just going to give a short demonstration of how it works. We have options for both English and Spanish, which have been translated through the city. We'll go through the English selections, because that's what I understand. You'll have a very short introduction to the survey, introduction to the project for those who are not familiar with it, and the importance of why we are doing this. We have graphics to kind of tell you if you may live in a home that is prone to lead services. I'm sorry. Ooh, okay. Hold on with me for 1 second. My apologies. This all set up and ready to go, and there we are. It appears as though our survey is non-functional right now. I'm very sorry. If you would like a demonstration, we are hopefully going to be having a video demonstration created that can be distributed and provided to anyone who requests it. Well, let's get back to the presentation then. So with the survey, it would walk you through identifying what your material is, and once you submit it, we would be able to see that data in our data set immediately. Just kind of further touching on it, anyone can submit it. Please, if you have friends and family that live in Greeley, encourage them to fill it out as well. The more data we can collect, the better. There's no such thing as not enough data, because data is truly the key to the success of this project. We will make the decisions for the safety of our city based on the data that we collect. We are developing this service line inventory, and we will be making a public map available so that anyone in the city can view the progress of the project and service line material towards the late 2024.
Okay. So is this like a federal thing that all of a sudden everybody's looking at the water? Or it's just come to the attention because there's such an explosion of people, you know, coming into Colorado, and it's hard for the systems to keep up?
So it's a combination. There's been, since the Clean Water Drinking Act has been established, it's kind of started there. And so originally the lead and copper program was established then, and it monitors water quality. And so throughout time since that was created, we monitored the water quality and ensured that it was safe drinking water. Since the 1990s, Greeley has, when we found it, we removed it out of our system, and that was on the public side of the system. This latest is due to anticipated changes to the lead and copper rule, which will require lead to be removed from the system on the private side in addition to the public side.
Okay, and I'm sorry, the very first part when you said that it was being established, and were you here in the 90s? Like on this panel, no? So you just walked into this?
Correct.
Congratulations. Okay, so if this has been known about, all right, for at least the last 20 years, all right, in the water system, and seeing how the workers have been out there and going out to a couple of the sites, the water main breaks and all that kind of thing. These people put in a lot above and beyond. How is the retention of the employees in the water department?
I think across the board, probably in the last 3 years, there's been challenges across all industries. And that's seen also in the city as well. So it is a challenging job, but it's also a rewarding job to work with the system and to provide a benefit to the community. So it is a challenge, but a lot of the people on staff enjoy that and want to provide a service to the community.
Okay. I'll get back into the deeper question on that. How is a pitcher filter, okay, a single pitcher filter, when you think about how much water you go through when you turn that tap on, going to shower, to bathe your children, to wash your dog, to fill your dog's, cats, whatever things, food up, to get your kids with water for their school, to get your stuff ready for your work, to cook with, because your skin is your biggest organ, so you're absorbing anyway. How are you going to educate people on a large level? All right.
So a couple things. One, just because if it has a lead line does not mean there's necessarily lead. The pitchers are precautionary to make sure that we're providing clean drinking water. It is provided for drinking water. It's not intended for bathing or dogs or any of that. So it is anticipated for drinking. There are certain incidences of leaching that would require it to come out. What we do at the treatment plants minimizes that or eliminates it, but it's not 100%. And so that's why we're also doing other methods with the filters and other methods to make sure that it's always removed.
Can you expand on the treatment plants?
Say that again?
Can you expand on the treatment plants?
So the Clean Water Drinking Act required, it's called the lead and copper rule, and it required you to monitor the water quality and then the potential, and there's a lot of parameters there to minimize leaching of copper and lead into the water. And so the water is specific pH, alkalinity, and other parameters so that it doesn't leach out those parameters. So the entire rule is to mitigate any leaching of those contaminants into the water.
Okay.
So just back to your question on the water filters. So, they do have a limited capacity and they are intended for the drinking water and then the cooking water. So like if you're cooking rice or something. And if it is for like a large family or a multi-family home, then we will make provision for an additional water filter if they need it.
In going into that, what came to mind was nursing homes, where there is a bunch of children, schools, shelters, okay? The Humane Society, that kind of that type of thing. I know that the churches in town have got to be on older lines. And I don't know that people, we have a bumper sticker at home, which is just really a big statement. What happens to the water happens to the people. So I just want to say thank you right now in advance for what you guys are doing. Okay? Getting it out to the people and having them actually hear what you're doing so that you can be better supported would be fantastic. And anymore, it seems like everybody's online, but that's not where I go for news. I don't want to hear the news. So I wouldn't know about this unless I saw it driving by. Are there billboards that could be put up? Are there things like that would grab people's attention?
So we're doing a lot of different avenues of communication. So we are sending out flyers. We are doing bill inserts as we are doing potholing. Before that, we do door hangers. When we get ready to pothole, we also do another door hanger. And then there's social media that we've done, Facebook, Twitter, and then also letters. So we're trying to get it out more, and we'll continue to get it out more and more. We generally started ramping up in January, and so it'll continue to increase in our communication. But the more that we can get it out, the better. The questionnaires, the more people that participate helps the program. And so the more we can get it out is the benefit to the community, the water and sewer department, and all the residents.
So water and sewer now together.
So water and sewer is one department, yes. We manage both the wastewater side and the water side.
Okay. And what happened to the reservoirs?
That's a part of the water system. So we have 6 drink.
She might be asking about the project we were going to do.
Okay. Is that, were you talking about the third project we were?
No, not specifically.
So
Reservoirs was elite.
So we have 6 raw water reservoirs up the Poudre Canyon that supply water to the city. We also have potable drinking water reservoirs. We have 3 locations of those, Gold Hill, Mosier, and 23rd Avenue. So all those store different types of water. Drinking water is potable storage, and then raw water is just snow melt, typical water from the mountains.
And 23rd holds how many?
23rd has 15 million gallons of storage.
And that has passed state inspections?
Yes. We did have a violation this last year, and we did lose some of those tanks, but the one we have left is 15 million.
So is that in the budget then to be able to put that back in? Because everywhere I look, Greeley is just exploding.
So engineering-wise, we evaluated the Mosier facility, and we're looking to redo the piping and utilize that one better to replace that storage. So rather than incurring the cost of replacing the full tank, we're looking at doing some piping improvements to utilize that storage at Mosier, which has another 15 million gallons of storage there.
Okay, and the big water tower that's outside of town?
That's a 2 million gallon, that's the elevated tank. And then we also have Gold Hill, which has buried storage, and it has 20 million gallons of storage.
I'm aware of that one, yeah. I'm aware of all of them. It's more a matter of, you guys have been handed a whole bunch of problems because it wasn't addressed before. I'm just aware, highly aware.
I'm glad.
And about the time that people start to go with that water, that's when they start appreciating it, okay? So have the engineers or the people that are working on the water tower or looking at doing, because I'm not quite sure on all the lines, it was just questions that came in as I sat down. What are they finding, or what have they found in the past that they have done when it had been already logged in and reported that there were issues with this and it wasn't done right the first time, and now we have funding, thank goodness, to have, well, to do whatever needs to be done the correct way.
So I think you're talking about the reservoirs at 23rd Avenue.
I'm talking about the reservoirs and I'm talking about the big tower.
So the tower doesn't have any issues. The 2 million gallons tank, we had it inspected a month ago. It doesn't have any issues. Maybe the Gold Hill tank back in the 70s had issues, but that was repaired, you might be thinking of.
I wasn't thinking, I wasn't here in the 70s.
So anyway, I'll go on the 23rd Avenue. Those original covers were approved by CDPHE as
What does
a
that
way, Colorado Public Health and Environment.
Okay.
So the regulatory group for water and sewer is CDPHE. And so when those were installed back in early 2000s, they were approved for that installation. Since then, there has been advancements in regulations and requirements, and there was identified in 22 some potential deficiencies, and so that's where, when we find out that from CDPHE, we took them out of service.
Okay. Are we having issues with being able to hire experienced or to be able to train employees in the water department, not on the higher levels in which this particular project is, but is there an issue with hiring, or are you needing?
I would say all across the board, you always need experienced staff. There is a shortage in water and sewer professionals, both from treatment, collections, wastewater, distribution. It all takes different certifications, and so it's very highly needed, and there's just not enough people going into that. So more awareness of that is always a benefit. But we are always looking for qualified staff and always needing them. We have been expanding, and we'll need to expand staff to accommodate the expanding system.
So what keeps popping in my mind is that one of the best ways, because people drive in and out of town all the time, perhaps advertising it to have people check their mail for exactly this would get people's attention and might cut down on your footwork and paper expenses as far as going the door to door. And you can put it both in English and Spanish so that, because people are driving and they see the billboards. Rather than stupid ones, let's have ones that are informative.
We appreciate the idea, and we'll definitely talk about it with Corey. He's our communications liaison, and so we open to all the different ideas, and we're taking as many avenues we can to get the message out. So I think that's a great idea.
Cool. Okay. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you very much. Is there any other questions?
Yeah, I got to add on to his. I have let you know that I've been with the water for 20 years, and I've done a lot of the copper replacements. And what they're doing with the surveys is gathering all kinds of information so that they can kind of create a pattern of what we have out there. And like on Cranford, that area, there's a possibility that there's a lot of galvanized and possibly a few lead lines. At your home over there in the Meeker area, not so much. However, you know the house that's on Reservoir Road and would that be about 27th Avenue? There's the farmhouses there. So back in the days, that was an old home that possibility had lead in that line, but it's surrounded by brand new homes. So that's what they're targeting with these surveys is what do we have out there? So we can create a pattern, and eventually they'll all be checked. They'll all be verified. And that's the model that they're trying to build here with the master spreadsheet that Patrick and Sophie have designed. And this team here is to create something instead of a whole bunch of websites, maps and things to go to where they can go to a central location, do an account number, boom, they have everything. So I'm honored to be a part of that team to share what I know. And I'll probably see you out there in the field because I'll be out there on the boots ground with the contractors, knocking on doors, handing out flyers, and things like that. So if you got any questions, I'm here. Okay? Yeah.
It so happens I know exactly the house he's talking about. It's at Reservoir Road and 27th Avenue Court. Drive by it like once or twice a day. Yeah, that thing was built long before 2221 10th Avenue, and that was built in the 30s. The reason I know that is my father was in the World War II, the Army Air Corps, and he went in 1942, and that house was at least 10 years old at that time. That was long before I was born. But I was supposed to go to Arlington Elementary School at 9th Avenue and 23rd Street. The school district wrote my parents and said, "This building is so old, it's ready to fall down on the students." My mother didn't want the building to crush me at age 6, so they moved to 1314 23rd Avenue Court. She talked her parents into buying lots out there, so they did. And guess what? Arlington School is still there. It was supposed to fall down in 1960. Guess what? All the schools they built in the 60s, they're tearing them down because they had asbestos, they had leaky roofs. John Evans comes to mind, Greeley West comes to mind. We used to call them the circus tent schools because they looked like East Memorial at, what would that be? East 20th Street and maybe it's Cherry Avenue or Cedar, can't remember. But it's right out there. I mean, it looks like a circus tent. Go out and have a look. They're amazing. They're junk.
Thank you very much.
I think you guys both brought up some very salient points there with regards to vulnerable populations, looking at children, schools, hospitals, anywhere where people may be potentially particularly endangered by lead exposure. And part of the program is that we are going above and beyond really to contact these folks, to be present in the community. Part of the revision does also require us to do sampling at those locations for lead. So we will be present at the schools, particularly elementary schools, childcare facilities as well, to help them with that sampling and to assist them with identifying the service line and internal plumbing materials. And our plan is to also go ahead and work with them to get those lines replaced too. So we really are concerned about our vulnerable populations and getting the sources of lead out of their water.
With that, if there's no other questions, we would invite you guys to look at the different posters. We'll have different staff around to talk to you. If you have any other questions, please let us know. And thank you very much for coming and participating. And please let us know if there's questions, and please communicate with neighbors and friends about the different lead programs, and then also getting out the message about questionnaires and information about their lead service lines entering the house. So thank you very much. Have a great night.
Basically, we're submitting this here to.
Our map of the city broken down by build date on our parcels.
Did